Hello everyone, welcome to Game Junk Prototype episode 41, recording on December 18th, 2020. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name's Andrew.
And the video game world is a rage this week.
Debacle.
Cyberpunk. It is a complete debacle. And we're going to have to talk about it. Get, what it might be like working on a game and what we would do in this situation. Who knows? It's crazy. It's been pulled off stores. People want refunds. IGN tossing major heat with 4 out of 10 previous gen console reviews. I'm no longer calling them current gen. Previous gen consoles. And we're going to get into it. And I've been playing it a lot, and I have, aside from the bugs, some serious thoughts about Cyberpunk, even though I'm only partway through Act 2, and I'm going to say it, it's mostly Cyberpunk's fault that I'm only that far in the game. So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing all right. I just finished Act 1, just starting Act 2, so I've been playing a bit. I have some thoughts as well. We'll get into it.
Definitely a bit. That's, you're just getting started, but the end of Act 1 is one of the highlights so far for me, so we won't get into spoilers there, but I think you've got enough information to go on, Sean, at this point. So let's get right into it. I think yesterday, Sony announced pulling Cyberpunk off the stores. Today, I think Xbox did the same. Am I correct?
No.
With that?
They didn't pull it, but they... I guess they've actually made their refund policy... It says they're expanding their existing refund policy to offer full refunds. So basically, there's no question. If you ask for a refund for Cyberpunk, you will get it from Microsoft, which is interesting. I mean, so I guess
there's
one
lots
of, the
of
things,
levels to this discussion. So,
yes.
Now,
but
it all started, I think, with obviously people being concerned, and then shortly they did not give review copies for the previous gen consoles. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they had to use only trailer footage for early video reviews of the game websites. They weren't allowed to use their own pulled footage of the game until after the fact, I think. So I think that's surfaced as well. And then the kind of some reviews followed. IGN giving it a 4 out of 10, saying it's almost unplayable on Xbox One and PS4. And also to some
meanwhile, 90% for PC on Metacritic last time I checked.
Yeah, which is
looking at it right now, it's down to 87.
Okay.
But
which is still very high.
Yes, but the PS4 and PS5 is PS4 and Xbox One is currently at 55.
Wow.
So a big drop off.
Well, there's definitely some attacks going on for sure, and a lot of players feel ripped off and lied to, which we've seen before in the gaming community. That's not it doesn't end well. People tend to get pretty vocal and angry, and comment sections go crazy, and maybe things get blown out of proportion more so than other things. I just think from what I've seen in gaming, it can be a little intense, let's say, at times when people are reacting to things. So since I've talked last week, I've played it a fair bit more. I've crashed many more times since then. I've crashed very regularly, probably every 30 to 40 minutes playing the game. And it's definitely causing a lot of frustration for me. And every time I crash, I usually get the feeling almost, okay, good, done with this game for now. The game does feel a bit like a chore to play. I'm going to be perfectly honest. So what do you guys think? Is this, people are saying, worst game launch ever? Does it matter? Who's to blame? I think there's lots of people to blame here. And obviously, I think most of it boils down to the do-re-mi, getting some of that green before Christmas, So, and I think there's lots of parties that want that green, and maybe they're regretting now that they wanted it so bad. I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe they still made, I'm sure they still made a lot of money, and might not care. So what do you guys think?
I think they already, like, there was some kind of emergency board meeting or something for CD Projekt Red, and they apparently said the cost of like patching the game and all the refunds and everything is nothing compared to the damage to their reputation, which is their biggest concern, which I think is true. I could say so you've been playing on PS5, right, Frank?
Yes.
As have I. I have not had a single crash yet. Now, I don't know if you had anything prior to Act 2. I think you said you had a couple.
Or I think.
Okay. So, I mean, so I'm playing it. I've seen some visual glitches. I've seen when you change clothes and stuff like that, I've seen things just disappear and not show up on the character, like weird stuff like that.
Lots of objects I can't pick up no matter how hard I try. I've soft locked, getting stuck in collisions once. So I was just talking crashes to start. There's been numerous other problems, but I guess it's still playable in some sense. Like, it's not like there's frame rate issues on PS4. It's not like I don't know what I'm doing. Like, my criticisms at this point, other than crashes, are more about gameplay, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, so I mean, I certainly have some criticisms of like the actual game. As far as things that are broken, just some visual stuff, it hasn't really prevented me from playing the game. So I'm feeling like maybe it's a little overblown, but I mean, based on the amount of people that must be asking for refunds, I mean, the fact that they pulled it from the store kind of says a lot. I have to assume it's not an exaggeration that this thing is just completely dead in the water right now. And so if that's the case, then maybe it is the worst launch. I mean, I'm trying to think of games that I've played at launch that were really buggy, and I can't think of anything that was like, vaguely remember Assassin's Creed Unity, I think.
Yep. That was a big one. Andromeda, Fallout 4, apparently The Witcher 3, but I don't remember that much about it.
I think Fallout 3 as well.
I did do some research because I did find, although this was not that popular a game, but I've always talked about the new versus original 3DS issues with some games, and there was a precedent for this, at least with IGN, where they reviewed Hyrule Warriors on original 3DS and 2DS and gave it a 4 out of 10, so almost the same thing. So I was kind of looking to see if they'd done this before, and it has happened before, where they've reviewed a separate SKU basically of the game this poorly. That made me think of something else. Sorry. But I mean, it's unprecedented in the sense that literally the most anticipated game of all time, I would say. Not just because of the game, but the whole year 2020, not a lot of games, brand new consoles coming out.
And like, the pedigree of the studio.
No great games, yeah. Everyone seemed to love CD Projekt Red, and I would say, like, I was saying this to other people, like, the hype levels for this game is not a good thing. Like, if it's bad, this could be a debacle. Let's say it. But it's a worst case scenario almost. Like, and okay, so there's many parties involved here. Now, I don't know if anyone's saying anything. I haven't read like speculation articles or whatever, but I mean, it's published by Warner Brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on what I've known from the games industry, if I had to bet here, I would bet it was coming from Warner Brothers that they have to finish this game by this date, like unquestionably. Also, if I was going to put the blame on speculate where the blame would lie, I would say it is 60% with Warner Brothers. Now, to that effect, I don't know what the deal was with CD Projekt Red. They're not owned. Are they owned by Warner Brothers? That I don't know.
No, they're standalone.
So there was probably,
and they're publicly traded.
Oh, okay. So there was definitely like a. Okay, well that's interesting. I didn't know that. So there's definitely probably a publisher agreement with relating to provided money, and they probably set a date that they were going to release it by, and had milestones and tons of other things going on throughout production.
And I bet calendar year 2020 was a big part of that.
Oh, for sure. And I bet well, it was supposed to be September, so they've already given them as much time
before
as
that April.
That's right. So, yeah, they've who knows what the contract said, but I think at some point they're like, no, this game's coming out no matter what. So, I mean, we can get into like CD Projekt Red. Obviously, some blame falls on them if they said they would have it done at some time, and you know, we like, or some people like games with enormous scope, and big part of releasing games is cutting stuff or deciding what stays and what goes. So I would say, like, it's not where the bugs are coming necessarily, but playing this game, I would cut about 50% of what I've played so far. If it was up to me. If I was the creative director of this game, I would have cut 50% of this game, of what I've played so far. It is, and it's very boring at times. It's basically dialogue for me so far, 50% of the game. And that is not why I play games, to listen to average conversations from virtual characters. I'm sorry. Not why I play video games. Not that I love the world building. I'm starting to like it more and more. I just, maybe it gets better as you go, but it is a lot of dialogue and it is confusing. So anyway.
Jump in here for a second.
Yeah, go for it. Someone else.
So just to go back what Dwyer was saying about, is this really as bad as it seems? I think it is, because not only has Sony pulled it off, but Xbox has explicitly made a statement about their refund policy. CD Projekt Red has put out, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 press statements, how they are actually going to cover the cost of people's refunds if the platform holders don't. I mean, that's a big deal, because they are publicly funded. Like, you're literally telling your shareholders, hey, sorry, you're not going to get your money because we're going to take your money and give it back to the people who bought it. Like, that's a big deal. And to Frank's point about, Warner Brothers wanting money, it wasn't just that. I bet they had deals with Microsoft to have Cyberpunk branded Xbox One X consoles, and they released Series X. So this is Microsoft's way to push out those last, SKUs of their old console in probably the last holiday season when people might be buying Xbox Ones. And so if they don't get it out, then Microsoft is probably looking at a big chunk of money that they invested in making these bundles that they expected probably to move a lot. And they'll be out of money. Sony will be out of holiday money. I bet not only Warner Brothers, but I bet the public investors, Sony, probably even like Epic and stuff on the Epic store. We're probably pushing them to get it out in this holiday window. I bet they were just torn in every direction possible.
Well, so let's get to the other guilty party here, and it's maybe more complicit than guilty, which would be Sony and Microsoft, in that they have pretty strict technical certification processes that you have to make sure your game works, and I'm guessing they push this game through the way it is. So like they said, yeah, you can launch it, because they, like, when they were torn, like Huck's saying, if it's going to release on Xbox and not ours, everyone's going to buy it on that one. It's like, you don't want to miss out on those sales. Ultimately, like, no one really cares about that. I don't see anyone putting blame on those two companies, although I think there should be some. And I think Nintendo just got lucky because, their console's so shitty it can't release on it. And Steam, it doesn't really matter, right? Like Steam, you can kind of do whatever you want. So they're kind of safe in that regard as well. Epic, I don't know that much about their store certification stuff. But I mean, I don't think they care that much. Like those console stakeholders or owners, they miss out on the 30% or whatever their markup is, and they'll get it back eventually if they eventually sell those games. Like, I don't think that matters at all. Retailers are probably pissed because, I don't know, that's new territory where someone buys a game, opens it, everything says you open a game, you can't return it. So now they're going to have to deal with angry parents after Christmas or whatever. And like that's a new thing. digital sales, whatever, like it's like they never bought it anyway. It's like the game didn't release. That doesn't really matter. But the physical sales, that's a bit of a different story. But yeah,
well, I mean, even with the digital stuff, like their policies generally are if you've, well, I think Sony's was if you've downloaded the game, you can't get a refund. And I think Microsoft's is if you've played the game, you can't get a refund. But obviously you can't find out the issues without playing the game. So, you know, they, at first I was hearing that Sony was really not honoring the refunds. People were asking for refunds and Sony was saying no and shutting them down, whereas Microsoft was being a little more open to it. But obviously they just got flooded with so many requests that they had no choice but to do it.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming there would be class action lawsuits no matter what. So, and there probably still will be at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of refunds for games is interesting. Like, I think on Steam, it's even more lenient. Like, I think you can play a bit of the game and it just say, hey, I didn't like this, and they'll let you get your money back. And I've always been kind of like, that's a little weird. I mean,
I think it's a certain amount of time logged on the game, as long as it's under maybe 2 hours, I think. Or is it an hour? I'm not sure. You can get your money back.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. There have been people who have abused that before. But I mean, in this case, I don't think anybody is, I think it's, you know, it's completely within reason to say, hey, this doesn't even run. Like, I can't even play this thing. Give me my money back. And I mean, the other issue obviously is that you can patch games now. Like, everybody has day one patches for their games. And if there's issues, sometimes it takes a little while, but you know, a game that launched buggy could end up being a great game, right? So it's like, well, should you expect people to just stick it out? And maybe, but when it's just in such bad shape that you literally can't play it, I don't know how you can expect people to just wait for months potentially until it's fixed, right?
That's why I will be waiting until June of next year to play this game once it's all patched and ready to go. And then it'll probably be a great experience, and I won't have any of these problems that you guys are having right now.
I still think I'm going to push through the game. Ultimately on PS5, it's not that bad for me. Like, the crashes are really annoying. I say one case where it's really bad. I did one of those scrubbing missions where you have to go through the different tracks, and it's like the detective mode in
Arkham
Batman
Origins
VR and stuff like that. Yeah, and
yeah.
Man, those are boring. Like, they're so boring and cumbersome. So I went through that whole thing, got teleported back to the car where I was started it from, crashed, had to go back in, had to do the whole thing over again. I'm like, oh my God. Like, it's the checkpoints that are really bad in the game as well, too. Like, that's just a general design issue for me with this game, especially when I have to pick up everything. And it is of benefit to pick up everything because you, like, sorry, getting into trophy stuff here, but in order to buy all the cars, you need a lot of money, and you pretty much have to pick up everything and sell it to get that much money. So I need to pick up everything, and I hate inventory management. Like, it's so monotonous. It's not fun. And this game is just constant picking stuff up. And like, when I talk about cutting stuff from the game, I'm not saying there aren't a selection of gamers out there that love the lore. Like, but these shards, there are like 3 shards in every room with like a page of stuff written about it. Who is writing this stuff? Like, if no one is
reading it.
Like, I feel so bad for people who had to write this dialogue and localize it and do all this stuff. And like, I don't know, like, maybe it's good. Like, maybe they have jobs writing stuff. I don't want to say, like, you know, if they thought it was worthwhile, I'm not going to say it's not, but just when you're trying to release a game, the more stuff you're putting in, the more stuff can go wrong. And this game is just putting so much unnecessary stuff in. Obviously, in the idea that the more you have the world building, the key feature of this game would be immersion. And the idea, like, in the the marketing, like you can do or be whatever you want in Night City, which is there to some degree. I don't know if it's more so than any game ever, or anything like that, that lets you choose things or do open mission structure. But I don't know, like there's just, the dialogue is just, it's 5 options every time. And I'm like, how much work
they
went
all
into
lead the
this?
same
Like,
way. Like if you do that
I know. And it's just
conversation
like,
over again in
like a
different
little
ways,
fold back thing where you pick a couple
Uh-huh.
things and ultimately you end up doing the same thing. And like, would it be better to write 1 or 2 really great lines of dialogue that, you know, you remember or advance the story versus 10 options that lead you to the same place anyway? Like, it just seems like such a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like in terms of choice in this game, I haven't really hit a point yet where I felt like my choices had any consequences. But I mean, maybe I'm still early. But I think a good example of what you're talking about is just the sheer amount of objects in the game that you can pick up that are just labeled junk. So they have, as far as I know, no use in the game other than you can break them down into
Sell them too.
components
So
and
there's
sell them.
you got to get the auto. One of the first perks you have to buy is auto dismantle for that stuff.
Right, yeah. But I'm reminded of Ghost of Tsushima where they just had this generic supplies that you just pick up everywhere. Like, why couldn't all that junk just be supplies? You know, like it doesn't need all this. Like, I guess it's cool, but like, just having to go around and pick up all these little things that are littered everywhere is a bit of a pain.
Oh yeah, I would say it's certainly not fun. If I had to put 2 words to it, it's not fun. And that, sorry, getting back to my other point, I'll do a whole mission or a part of a mission, and then I will pick up everything along the way, and then I'll get killed for some reason I don't even know. Like fighting one of the cyber psychos or whatever they are. I get like this weird energy pulse out of nowhere and I'm dead. And I'm like, oh, now I got to go pick up everything again along the way and do everything again. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you're making me redo the worst parts of your game. It reminds me of one of the worst missions I've ever played in my life. I think, I don't know if I talked about this on the show or not. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in the Lost Woods, Mystery Woods, whatever it's called. Did you guys do the stealth mission where you follow the Korok and you can't be seen?
Yeah.
One of the worst missions in Nintendo design history. Like, it is so slow and so boring, only to get to the last part, which is confusing and difficult. And if you fail, you have to redo the whole thing and do the most boring, slow gameplay just to get back to it to fail it again. It is the worst. And I would say all of the stealth sections in Breath of the Wild that are mandatory stealth, including the one thieves hideout you go into, are awful. Absolutely awful. And I stand by that. But having to redo the worst stuff in your game, it's just like, it's a drain. And then when it's not even your fault, when the game crashes and you have to redo that terrible stuff again, ugh.
So, question, I don't know if you know this, Frank, but you can, so there's checkpoints and it auto saves, but you can also manually save. Do you know if you like manually save partway through, like before a checkpoint, would you then be able to continue from that?
Possibly. I would think so. So I believe, like, it does multiple auto saves. I'm assuming because there are so many bugs and people got into terrible states with their games. So like, well, let's keep 5 auto saves so they can at least go back to another. So I'm assuming you can save state, basically, is what it's doing at any point in the game. But, you know, that's why I play video games, to save every 5 seconds and make sure that
Yeah.
there's progress. So I remember that was a big issue with Rage on PS3, where you could save, but like the saving and loading on Rage on PlayStation was like a minute. It was the worst.
Yeah.
We bring this back to Debacle territory.
Okay, let's get
Yeah.
back to the Debacle. Sorry.
We were talking about the certification process. And so what I imagine happened is that Sony and Microsoft both found all these problems you guys are talking about and said, what's up? Like, you can't ship the game. CD Projekt Red probably said, hey, we'll have them fixed for a day 1 patch. Trust us. We're good for it. And then obviously they already knew about COVID, but COVID makes this a lot harder because you can't just like send people home with development kits. It doesn't work like that. You have to have, especially for Sony, you have to have like special IP whitelisting. You have to have developer accounts all set up. You can't just like, it just doesn't work out of the box. They have precautions to make sure that not just anyone can get onto the developer network, right? So it's not as easy as people might think to like get this. And I'm sure the team of people working on the PS4 version and the Xbox One version were very small, very limited. And so they are probably grinding it out with a minimal team of artists and programmers trying to fix all this stuff while the main team, which I think is 800 people, are trying to cram in all the other fixes. So now you have this like mad dash of craziness happening at the end, and you have these console port guys just trying to keep up and trying to make sure that everything, even if you had like 10 QA people on each console platform, I don't think it would be enough to test this game in like a month, because I think they delayed it. It went gold and then they push it out like a month, right? To get a day one patch fully ready to go. It was something like that, or maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks, I think.
But even that is not that much time to put together like a big project like that and fully test it, do full regression testing. It's just not enough time. And like, you just don't have the people, don't have the manpower.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other issues, I mean, there was all this talk about them crunching, even after, you know, the executives said, no, we don't do that. We're not going to crunch. They still ended up having to crunch. And now think about how you would feel if you're on that team. You just worked your ass off. Game got delayed, had to keep crunching. Game comes out. Now it's a disaster. And now, well, you were probably going to roll over into DLC work. Now you're crunching still to get these stupid fixes out. And everybody's telling you your game is shit. Like, think of how crappy they must feel right now.
Now, to be fair, a lot of people are saying the game is great, at least on PC, right? So,
yeah, there has been.
It can be worse to make a terrible game, like crunch a whole summer and release a terrible game that no one wants patched to begin with. So, I've been there, but so there, as a developer, there's worse scenarios, but it does suck. Like, I didn't know there were 800 people. Like,
that's huge, and the whole encapsulated CD Projekt Red is like over 1,000, because they also are like GOG, like goodoldgames.com. That's part of their umbrella, and CD Projekt. So it's a huge company. And just to go back on like the certification thing, like, so Sony probably gave them waivers to say, okay, you can go gold, but like this stuff needs to be fixed for the day one patch or whatever. And they probably said, oh yeah, we'll have it done. And they probably just couldn't get it all done. And Sony, like we were saying before, they wanted that Christmas money. So they probably said, okay, well, hopefully this doesn't come up as much as we're finding it or something. And then they let it go. And yeah, Microsoft as well, not just Sony.
There's like, clearly there was a million reasons why they had to get this out before Christmas, right? And a lot of people have said, like, because I think their initial sort of apology statement, they're like, oh yeah, sorry, we just didn't test, we weren't looking at the last gen stuff, and I guess we didn't realize how bad it was. Do you believe that? I don't believe that. Like, they had in their bug tracking system hundreds of bugs sitting there that they knew about.
Probably thousands.
Like, what could they do? Yeah,
and that's just bugs. Like, I would say there's probably a list of like probably 500 things that is, you know, this is kind of weird, or this is a little broken or inconvenient, or if I was a designer of this game, stuff I would want to fix or address. Like, there are so many things, and there's so many missions that, you know, we had a little debate on a previous episode, Huck, about like throwing people at problems, like scalability of problem solving and stuff like that. Yeah. And, you know, a game like this, it's a little different because it's almost like a double scaling, where it's not like they kept a problem or a typical game problem a consistent size and scaled up the team to match it, they kind of scaled both. Like the scale of the game is insane and the scale of the people. Like, I don't know if it was like a half the scope game and still had that many people. I think a lot of this stuff would get fixed, but it does make me think, I was a little overzealous in my claims that you can throw people at problems, but it's tough to say this is a definitive example of that because the scale and amount of shit in this game, and I do mean shit, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Ubisoft maybe seems like the only company that maybe has mastered that scale up to cover.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about it, the way it works, like, yeah, so say they, are a month away from release, they've got hundreds, if not thousands of bugs, they know they need to be fixed, and they say, oh, okay, well, we're just going to throw like 200 people at this and get those bugs fixed. But they might not be people who worked on the project, so they're not unfamiliar with it. These people are all crunching, so they're all tired. Like, it's just, it doesn't work that way. Like, it seems like it should, but it doesn't. And when a game is as complex as this game is, it's no wonder that it's broken.
Yeah, and then one angle you could say is like, oh, well, why didn't they just release it on PC? But like we talked about before, there were guaranteed deals struck. Like, Sony would not be happy if it just came out on Steam and Epic. Microsoft would not be happy, same thing. Well, Microsoft probably wouldn't care because they could probably release it on the Microsoft Store or something. They wouldn't care as much. But, like, you just can't drop a company like Sony and be like, sorry. That is probably a huge chunk of your revenue for all your future games. If you piss Sony off, they would not be happy. And you can't just like drop that relationship because you want the game out for Christmas.
But with Sony, what would they say? Like, we're never going to let you they want their games there eventually, as long as they're good. Like, they don't have to do anything.
It's marketing.
Yeah, but I don't think they would say, like, pissing off Sony, I would think ultimately is meaningless. So who cares if you piss off Sony? If they want 30% of your future game sales, they'll put it on the store. Like, who cares? You might not...
But there's a couple other things. Like, there's pre-orders. So you got people who pre-ordered on those platforms, and they're going to see that it comes out on PC, but it doesn't come out on their system, and they're going to be pissed, right? And I don't know. I think the other thing is just... I don't know. Like, I think no matter what, you're kind of, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, right? Like, if you split up and only release on part of your potential consoles or whatever, like, I think they thought that that day one patch would fix most of the issues, right? And it just didn't. So, like, it's never happened before that it's come out and it's been this bad and it's gotten pulled from the store. Like, I feel like this is going to be a moment that is going to indicate how people do launches in the future, and maybe will think twice and will push back on external pressure. But I think people always just assume, well, okay, it'll come out, maybe the reviews will be not great, but like, it's still going to sell. It's still going to make a ton of money. Like, it just seems like, I don't think people understood what the backlash could have been and how harmful.
There's definitely a game with this precedent, and that can proves that it can go the other way, which is No Man's Sky, which was absolutely destroyed when it was launched. Yeah. And now it got, I think, best ongoing or whatever that award was, community or support in like adding VR and doing tons of stuff like that. So I ultimately think no one's going to remember it a year from now, but it is a bit of and I'm assuming that's what they said when they said we're going to launch anyway. It's like, well, yeah, people will be mad, but they'll still buy it. And then worst case, they'll buy it again when I'm sure there's like movie talk about this series, sequels and stuff like that. It's like, we'll do whatever it takes to make it better eventually, but we're going to deal with the problems like right now. And it's all worth it, essentially. Now, would it have been worth it to delay? That's a whole nother debate, but we'll never know. But I like, it's a crazy situation. I've never. It was like, again, kind of like 2020 being this kind of weird year that, everything can go wrong. Like, this was the like worst case, like kind of perfect scenario of a super overhyped game and a bad launch happening at the worst possible time, and it's just, it's the way it goes. Now, that's what I was going to say. You were talking about the trend or setting a precedent for future game releases. I hope it's a different trend, and it's that games do not try to be this ambitious. And we talked before about AAA games and scalability, and Sean Layden talking about like it's not sustainable, and pricing models and game prices going up. I hope it's okay. Our games do not have to be this big. Let's make games we know we can make.
But they kind of do, right? Like that's when it comes to AAA games, like there was an interesting debate going on. I think it was like on Twitter. I can't remember. Like there was a lot of people talking about just the idea of crunch, and that, the Cyberpunk team had to crunch, and people are like, oh, well, crunch is inevitable on a game of that size that's, with this many people working on it. And people are like, oh, but what about all these indie studios that don't crunch? And it's like, yeah, but indie games are like so much more smaller and contained than this game. And it's true. But the thing is, the whole reason why people were excited about Cyberpunk is because of how huge it was, right? Like there's people that love these giant RPG open world games and being able to explore them. And if you said that this was going to be a very linear, contained 10-hour game, there's no way the hype would have been where it was. Okay. There's no way people.
Well, the story is only, I think, 20 hours or so, or less.
Well, I was going to mention that when you were talking about whether they cut stuff. I was wondering if maybe they did cut stuff from the main story, because that does seem a little short.
The story's bloated with the dialogue stuff I talked about. Like, I'm not saying necessarily make the world less explorable. I'm sure there's tons of bugs and just time spent recording voice actors and, like doing all these different dialogue scenarios. Like, cut that shit out. Like, that's size that I don't need. It's making your game worse, not better. Of course, that's a personal opinion, but
yeah, I mean, I guess it's not just size. Like, I mean, in this case, Cyberpunk, that's a selling point, and I think that's the reason why there was crunch and et cetera, et cetera. But then look at The Last of Us Part 2. I don't think it was necessarily the size of the game. I think it was just that the bar for what they had to hit for The Last of Us Part 2 to be as good as the previous game and better is so high that they just had to keep pushing and pushing.
I think part of that's on them. If that game had been 7 hours shorter, it would have been a better game, and it would have gotten the exact same reviews. So this idea of, the length of games, that's what's got to change, at least to help fix the problem. Do you honestly think if Last of Us 2 was 7 hours shorter, anything would have changed about its awards or anything that would have, like, the success it had?
I don't know. Like, I think there is, when people go to buy a game, just the average gamer, I think length of game is important to them. And I don't know if there's got to be some magic number they're trying to hit. I feel like 20 hours is kind of what it is right now. And if it's less than that, people are like, oh, maybe I don't want to invest my money into that. And that's just become, every AAA game has to be 20 hours or more. And that's just the way it is.
Well, Nintendo has the solution. They know the right way to fix these problems. Do not put your games on sale ever. Because the argument is, you know what? If it's that short or whatever, I'll wait till it's on sale. Nintendo knows if our games are good, they're always worth $80. Whether it's the beginning of the console or the end. And, no one's willing to commit to, like, guess what? You want Last of Us 2? It's going to be $80 for the next 4 years. So you can decide when you want to play it, whether it's worth playing if it's 20 hours long or not. But that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, somehow they've positioned themselves where the quality of the game is all that matters. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like there probably are some people who would look at game length on a Nintendo game as well. Like Super Mario Odyssey, the main story was pretty short, but then they gave you lots of extra stuff to do afterwards. So maybe that's a way to compensate as well. But
I mean, Link's Awakening is an $80 game. That's a remake of a game. It was $80. It did very well. People loved it. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't see. It's just so weird when we pick and choose what games. Obviously, we've talked about The Order a lot. That was like a 7-hour game, but a very good 7-hour game to me. Like, and it's everyone criticized it for being short, but then Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes is a glorified demo at $50, and it got 8.5 on every review site. Like, I don't understand the journalism involved in deciding when value matters and when it doesn't. Like, either it doesn't matter at all, and it's the consumer's decision to decide what value is from that perspective, or it gets into weird territory then. So, like, is one level of Mario that's a great level worth, a full price game? Who knows? But it's just, that's what's got to stop. And I'm not. They might have said, look, we are making an open, huge game. That's what we do at this company. And that's what people want from our games. And, that's what happens when you do that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. I guess one other little thing, just, again, on the topic of this, maybe setting a precedent or something. I do wonder if, so the whole thing about pre-orders, like the last couple of years, there's been a lot of people saying, don't pre-order games, because you're just enabling these companies that dump a game out and it's not quite ready yet, but they'll fix it later. And you've already paid for it. So, you lose. And I kind of get that. And I wonder if this is kind of the slowly building anger over that stuff until finally it boils over. And now this is the game where people have said, we're sick of pre-ordering games that aren't ready, and we're going to take a stand, and everybody's asking for a refund on this thing. Maybe just out of principle. Maybe they didn't have that many issues with it, but they just forget it. I want my money back. And that's why all of a sudden this is happening.
well, pre-ordering doesn't make sense, first of all. It kind of made sense when we were teenagers or in our 20s because they were limited physical copies, right? So it was like, well, I want to make sure I have it the day it comes out, so I better pre-order it to make sure. That doesn't exist anymore if you're willing to buy digital. That is a non-factor. So the only existing factor right now is pre-order bonuses or incentives. You should never pre-order a game unless like you want to play it day of. And then what I do is I pre-order it 3 days before, once I know it's coming out, and maybe I know I want it and I want those digital bonuses, whatever. But you know what's going to happen. They're just going to move the carrot a little further back. There's going to be a pre-order exclusive that's part of a window, like pre-order it a year ahead of time and get all these extra super bonuses, and pre-order it a week ahead of time, and it shrinks as the pre-order window closes, which, you know what? I'm fine with that. If that's how you want to incentivize pre-orders and someone wants that game that bad or is that passionate about a franchise, sure, go for it. But never pre-order a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. It really doesn't make sense anymore other than for you to be like, I love this game, I'm supporting it. Like there was somebody who was, I don't remember where this came from, but it was just another thing I probably saw on Twitter this week where in somebody's review, they wrote that, or maybe it wasn't a review, maybe it was just an article about this whole situation, but they wrote that basically all these people have pre-ordered. It was more about how the reviews that were giving negative reviews got tons of criticism from people who hadn't even played it yet, right? Like that happens with movies. Comic book movies come out, critics give it a bad review, and people haven't even seen the movie yet, and they start slamming the critics. You don't know what you're talking about. And with games, if you've pre-ordered, you're invested in that game, right? You're reading reviews just to kind of be validated that you spent your money on something good. And if you read that it's bad, you're like, fuck you, you're wrong. So it's creates such a weird situation with the pre-orders. But one weird thing, I wonder if at some point we're going to see, like, if you pre-order the game, you can play it on this date. If you wait, you have to play it later or something.
That does happen already.
That's EA,
I guess
EA does that.
Really,
Also,
like for
Avengers did that, I'm pretty sure, and
like not just betas though, like the actual game.
I think Tomb Raider was like that too. You could play 3 days earlier if you ordered the deluxe edition.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
EA's
just
kind
that
of done
makes-
that with Play as well, right?
Yeah. Just on the pre-order thing, Also, it doesn't even benefit the developers, from my knowledge. All that money goes to the platform you're pre-ordering on. It's not like early access. I much rather support an early access game and give the developers my actual money to help them develop the game. Like, I already bought Rogue Legacy 2 because I like the guys at Celador Games. I've worked with one guy, Teddy, before, so I'll buy that game. I played it for like 10 minutes. I'll wait till it's done. I don't care. He's got my money already. He can use that to help make the game. Same with like Hades, got big support in that way, right? Other games that go this early access route, I'd much rather support because it actually supports the developer ahead of time. You still get your game, and you are kind of guaranteeing that it will get made in some sense.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to bring that up too. Like, early access seems to be the correct way to replace pre-orders to some degrry. And people,
Or what happened to Kickstarter, man? Remember Kickstarter?
they're waiting for little devil inside.
I'm still waiting for Star Citizen. I think I'm on year 8.
Yeah, I mean, well, that kind of was that, but I guess maybe people abused it too much and it kind of died out. But
there's one other misconception I've kind of heard of relating to Cyberpunk, and that's it's been in development for 10 years or 8 years or something like that. How is it not done yet? And, I think like we worked at a company where Too Human was said to be in development for 10 years. And this weird idea that how long a game is in development for is a direct correlation to how good it should be or whether or not it should be done. Like, games get thrown out. In the case of Too Human, it was on like 3 different consoles and was completely thrown out at some point. So companies have different teams. Like, it might be 5 people working on a game, not all 800. And just because you've heard of a game doesn't mean it's in full production and all this stuff. So that's one thing that really needs to go. This idea of, oh, we've been waiting for this game for 10 years. Now, you have to be aware that people are going to say that. And if you announce a game, if it's not out, that people are just going to keep saying, well, we've heard about this forever. Still haven't heard anything about Metroid Prime 4 lately, other than I'm glad Nintendo will release it when it's ready. But actually, this is kind of working in their favor. Like, Nintendo releasing stuff when it's ready. We're kind of seeing why that is right now, and maybe they've learned from things in the past. But yeah, that's one thing I've heard about with this game, and who knows what happens in the making of a game. Like,
I've got multiple design documents stored away. I guess those are in development too, technically, right? I'm working on those design documents here and there. So when those games come out in 25 years, I guess they'll be in development for 30 years. I'll be the winner.
yeah, I mean, there's pre-production, just like with movies, right? Like, movies can be in quote unquote development for decades, and then suddenly they go into production, they actually get shot. Well, I mean, games are kind of like that, where it's like all of a sudden it goes into full production, a whole team's working on it, but people might be just doing a little demo for years. So
yeah, and like, you prototype stuff, you figure out mechanics, like, that's still developing in the context of a video game, but it's not like you have anything to show for it. You're like learning how you're going to make the game. That's why you don't put, Flash videos at E3 conferences unless you have anything really to show. Anyway, I don't know. I guess I could say a few more things about Cyberpunk the game if you want to before. It's all I've played, so is there anything else we should cover about the release of Cyberpunk, or have we kind of shit on it enough? I kind of feel bad in some ways. Like, it's taken such a huge beating that it almost feels not quite fair. Like, I haven't played it on previous generation consoles, but, it's not a great experience. I think half of that is that it was rushed, and half of it is that, it's an okay game. I don't know if it's an amazing game. I don't think it is. But it's a little too early for me to tell it right now.
yeah, I mean, it feels to me like it's like gone almost too far in the other direction, but it was only like in the span of a week, it went from like, can't wait, this is gonna be the best game ever, people like shitting on any reviewer who didn't give it a 10, to like all of a sudden everyone hates this game, everyone hates CD Projekt Red. Like,
I'd say there's lots of people who don't hate the game. I that are defending it and stuff like that and saying, look, on PC I loved it. It's not you said it's not crashing for you, so I wouldn't say it's a unanimous experience that it's awful. It's not awful for me. I have lots of issues with the game.
I think I'm liking it more than you are so far. So
Yeah. And if this game, no one had heard about it before and it was released in this state, would anyone be even talking about it? If Keanu Reeves wasn't associated with this game, would anyone care?
Yes.
I don't know.
Not to this level. I think it's like, it is a weird game, and this is what's exceptionally rare about it now that I think about it. It is a new IP that...
Well, it's based on a role-playing game, though, right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's based on... Is it a role-playing game or is it a novel?
I think it's like a role-playing game.
The fact that I've never heard of either of those things, I'm going to...
I think it's Polish.
The thought
I think
that
it's Polish, just like The Witcher.
Okay, so let's put it this way then. Let's pretend it's a new IP in some way.
Okay.
I don't think their Cyberpunk games or role-playing books are flying off the shelves at Walmart's, okay? So let's say it's a new IP, and no new IP has ever been this hyped up before. Like, sequels, sure, especially sequels on next-gen consoles. Can you think of a game with no previous entry in the series that has gotten this much attention as a new IP and not based on a movie or anything else?
Maybe Destiny?
Maybe,
yeah.
Maybe Last of Us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was quite as high for Last of Us, but
yeah, I think those are
both
those are both really good examples. Like, and again, it's based on reputation of developer,
Right.
and I think that is why CD Projekt Red was probably really hesitant to release it. It is a huge
we talked about it
reputation.
earlier. No Man's Sky is another example.
Yeah, I don't think that was that hype though, especially because it was only on PlayStation, and I mean, like, this has mass appeal like across all consoles, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know. I have nothing else to say about the release. I hope it gets better. I won't be refunding mine. I'm going to continue playing it over the holidays. That is, unless the actual gameplay continues to grate on me.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to say about the release, but we can talk a little more about the game.
Okay,
you
so
want.
In terms of the game, I just find the game doesn't do anything really well. Like, the driving is cumbersome, especially, I don't know if you've gotten on a motor scooter or a motorbike. It's like really hard to control those. I'm like, what is going on? The shooting is okay. The brawling hand-to-hand combat is not good, in my opinion. I don't mind the weapons, the hand-to-hand weapon, or the like katanas and knives. I kind of have the most fun with those and assault rifles and stuff like that. But like, the AI is pretty dumb, right? Like, they just kind of stand in place. Huck, you're not going to like the AI in this game, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me. I like dumb AI. I'm not like I'm fine with AI being stupid, but the hacking and all the technological abilities are super overwhelming. I'm starting to use them more. Stealth is okay. It's not bad. But there's not one facet of this game other than the characters and world building, which is a huge part of this game, that I'm like, wow, it does this better than any game has done this before. Like, everything is average except for the world of Cyberpunk. It is, even The Witcher, like, I remember the combat being pretty interesting, and you had the silver sword versus the steel sword, and like decision making with how you attack monsters versus humans, and the spells were kind of fun. Like, the actual gameplay was pretty intriguing in The Witcher, including the scale of the enemies, and I'm not finding that aspect, like the gameplay, fun at all in this game. And like I said, so much dialogue, so much talking and names that I learn about that I honestly didn't need to remember, because they might disappear in a lot of cases. So I'm like, why was I reading bios and information on these characters that I don't need to care about at all, and picking up every shard? Like, within 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'll pick that shard up. It's never getting read, ever. Like, that is such, like, why? I know it's there for some gamers, but it's like, oh, it's so annoying. But, yeah, it's okay. I will say the last thing, then you can go, Sean, sorry. we're both at the same point where the Keanu Reeves character has been introduced. And to me, that is the one redeeming aspect of this game so far. That idea, what that character is, how they're integrated into the main character's story is not something I've seen done before to my recollection. And telling it from a first-person perspective in an interactive medium, I think has a lot of potential for what's going on there. I don't know if it'll live up to that potential, but like I've talked before about first-person narratives and even comparing something like Hardcore Henry to the stories in first-person shooters. Like this seems like an amazing medium to investigate this idea. So we'll see where it goes. I'm definitely intrigued by the hook of the story.
Yeah, I'm kind of digging the story. I would say overall, like dialogue, voice acting isn't great, but the story in the world is definitely what's keeping me going right now, and I'm enjoying that. I'm mostly just playing it like a shooter. I haven't been doing any hand-to-hand stuff. I've tried a little bit of the hacking, but I'm not really seeing the benefit so far.
Sean's not hacking your game's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's part of the problem is like there's not a lot of like I'm not seeing like a core gameplay loop that's addictive that I keep wanting to do this thing. You know, like Ghost of Tsushima, just finished that. The combat, at first it was a little frustrating, but by the end I was definitely in the flow of the combat. I always wanted to, if there was an enemy, I would stop and want to fight. This, I'm not feeling that. It kind of feels, like I said originally, it kind of felt like the Elder Scrolls games and stuff like that, where it's this big world, a lot of stuff to explore, but a little clunky. And now where I'm at the game, it's starting to feel almost just like a sci-fi skinned GTA.
That's exactly what it is. I would agree.
Yeah. But, and I agree with you. There was a lot of talking, a lot of sitting and watching, which, I'm thinking of other games like, even like Death Stranding or like some of the Metal Gear games. Like, yeah, there's long cinematics, but it's cinematic. Whereas this is all from the first person perspective and things just look a little janky sometimes. And it's like, okay, I'm just sitting here watching this thing that I'm not like, the story's cool, but like the presentation isn't blowing me away, I guess.
There's presentation wise, so many quality of life issues with this game. Tracking quests, letting me do quests that I can't even do yet, like that I go to do and it's like, oh, I can't even do it. Thanks for wasting my time. The menus are clearly designed for PC and do not translate well to consoles at all.
Well, yeah, the fact that you have like basically a mouse pointer you're moving around for like the inventory and stuff.
Selling stuff is so annoying. No options to sort loot and like auto junk or auto sell stuff. Like, I
have a question about the inventory. Can you become like encumbered or whatever they call it?
You're going to have to be encumbered.
Oh, no.
If you want to play this game. You got to pick up everything. At least you can dismantle. You can dismantle. Thank God.
I was like at the end of Act 1, I was at that point where I picked up too much stuff and I kept getting that message saying, you have too much stuff, get rid of something. And like, I guess you can still move. Like, I don't know if at some point it stops you and says, okay, you can't move now, do something. But it was annoying because I kept going through all these sort of cutscene sections where I couldn't access my inventory to get rid of anything. And yet that message kept coming up and I was like, fucking go away. So that was pretty annoying.
Yeah. I've had times where I couldn't run and I looked it up online like, oh, you're over encumbered. Like, and I wasn't. Pressing run was doing nothing for me. You can get a weird, like, too many things can be happening on screen at once, like where I'm trying to pick something up, but I'm beside someone who's telling me to sit down, and I'm like, I end up sitting down and having to listen and get back up. Like, it is just a very cumbersome experience in almost every way, and I think that's the intent. There's these games now that are about. It started with Red Dead, and this game I would include like. About the little things and like exposing you to every aspect of a world, and I just don't know if those games are for me. I don't know if I'm if that's the experience I'm looking for when I'm playing games.
Yeah, I mean, generally I'm not as much into these kinds of games, but I've kind of been like, okay, I'll really give this one a chance because, like I said, I do like the world quite a bit. But I don't know. I've been sort of like, I guess there's been a few open world games I've been enjoying, and I feel like I've been teaching myself to like sort of ignore some of the side quests and things and try to not be overwhelmed by stuff. And so I think part of that was just my issue with those games, but this one is pretty hard to not get overwhelmed with. Like there's just a lot going on. And, you know, Frank brought up last week that I think one of the first missions where you're fighting people and somebody's hacking you, and like they do not they don't ease you into that at all. And it's pretty annoying. Like I think you have to like
tutorials is like there's just this virtual thing that you go to, and it's like, oh, here's a virtual room to find out how to shoot. Like you have all these story things like integrated into the story, like, and make me learn how to play your game or why I should like your game. Don't make me like, I know that there's people out there right now saying, no, Frank, you're an idiot. That's why we like these games. It lets us play them the way we want. But I at least want the game to tell me why it's cool to play it in every different possible way, or make me think about those decisions rather than just to resorting to what's easiest. Like if I was designing that game, I would think it was a failure on my part if I didn't make someone playing the game think, or make them make a hard decision like, oh, I want to do this stealthily. Playing stealth is really cool, but so is playing it with guns. Like they've showed me how to do both in really cool ways. Now it's up to me to pick which way I like the best. And I don't think the game sets that up at all to the point where it's like a meaningful play decision.
Yeah, I mean, that hacking thing is just such a weird, you know, because it's basically your first mission, and that really feels overwhelming because you're getting these messages saying you're overheating and your health's going down, and you don't know why. And it's like, I guess just, you know, for anybody who hasn't played the game yet and is thinking about it, if somebody has a line of sight on you, they can hack you.
Oh,
but if
it's the opposite. If they don't have a line of sight, they can hack you.
I think they have to have a line of sight. You can duck behind cover and then they can't hack you anymore.
Well, I didn't even know that. I thought it was you had to close the distance, or you had to actually see them to stop them from hacking you. Like they're doing it the opposite way. Well, someone in the comments can say who's right or who's wrong, no matter who's
yeah, I guess
no matter who's right, the game loses. Because if we don't know, that's really sad. And there's definitely times where I've followed the orange indicator in the center of the screen to like see who's hacking me. And maybe that's why I didn't figure it out. I needed to break the line of sight. But I feel like I've gone towards it. I found the person hacking me, or I thought I did, and then it flipped over top of me. And I'm like, are they above me? Now it's actually making sense. And I'm actually embarrassed that I didn't figure it out. But you know what? Fuck you. It's your fault, Cyberpunk.
There is a perk also that will show you who's hacking you, apparently.
Oh, God, I'm buying that as soon as we're done.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but it might be worth investing in.
Oh, that is definitely worth investing in.
But yeah, definitely just, you know, and like that first mission, I probably picked up like 100 things.
Yeah.
I was like,
and then I'm picking up every beverage, and it's like this one gives you 30% stamina boost, and that's why I loved Horizon. It was like the simplest economies. Everything made sense. It was perfect for me. That is exactly what I want in a game. Horizon's economy system. Color-coded, simple, dynamic. You're perfect. Thank you, Horizon. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about this game for now.
Yeah, I'm good, but I'm going to keep playing. We'll see how it goes.
All right, Huck, what have you been playing?
So I actually played a bunch because I didn't talk about anything last week either. But after your rave review of ScourgeBringer, I played that. And let's see here. Let me put it on screen again for... Oh, wait, that's not it. Let me put it on screen for those that forget. Let's see here if it'll work. Yeah, so this game, I really enjoyed it, but I was finding it quite difficult. Sorry, let me mute that. And it really reminded me of Rogue Legacy, though, when I was playing it. Almost everything about it was similar. The upgrade system, A lot of the enemies kind of felt the same, though I did really like the movement in the game,
Oh yeah.
where you have double jump, you have this like quick dash across the screen, and also when you slice into an enemy, you kind of travel in that direction as well, and then it kind of just adds this extra momentum to you that you kind of use to flow around the screen, and that was really slick. I never really got it. There's also a ranged weapon. I never use it, and I never.
Oh, you gotta start. Okay, so my tips for you would be, and I thought it was really difficult too. Start using your gun more. And my instinct, because you feel so powerful, because it's like so twitchy, I was kind of button mashing. As soon as I stopped, like, kind of just doing button mashing, I got so much better. Like, really thinking about the smashbacks and understanding that if enemies have an exclamation point ahead of them and you smash them, you stun them. Like, I was
do like a strong attack to stun them. Yeah.
So, like, as soon as I stopped button mashing, I would say, like, try your next run and don't dash at anyone. Just kind of like double jump and use the attacks, like, really carefully. And then eventually you'll just get better at doing that faster and faster. And I was the same. I was like, I think I'm done with this game. And then for whatever reason, my next run, it all just clicked.
Yeah, I've been the counterattack thing I've been getting, and I've got through the first area and gotten into the second area pretty consistently. But depending on how much life I get through with, that's the real question mark. And I try to do every room in that first area before progressing to the second area. I don't know if that's the right approach. I guess maybe it is if I want to keep upgrading my skill tree. But yeah, I have been really enjoying it, and I will keep playing it. I am enjoying it. The next thing I played was a game called The Falconeer. Have you guys heard of this game?
I've heard of it. Is this also a VR game or no?
That's Falcon Age, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this game, I was interested in it because I really like the art style, but the game itself is really weird. So yeah, it looks really cool. And like in a screenshot, it looks incredible. Like all these screenshots you're seeing, this trailer sold me on this game. I was like, okay, you're flying as a bird or something, but it's basically like a TIE fighter shooter game, but you're on a bird.
It's like that dragon game or the two dragon games we were talking about.
Yeah. So, but the way they introduce the mechanics to you is really clunky. The controls are really clunky. There's one thing that really drives me nuts, and it's that in the first couple missions, everything's really far away from you, and so you have to fly these super long straight lines. But if you stop touching the controls, your bird starts doing this weird like circle arc on the screen, but it's not like a complete circle. So you actually start steering away from where you're trying to go. So it's like it's a circle, but it's like more you go more left than you go right. So you don't always come back to where you originally were pointing. So eventually, if you just leave it, you veer off course and you don't go to where you want to go, which is super weird. And I don't understand why they put that in. Like, if you're going to make me travel all this distance and make it boring, why are you now adding this extra thing where you're forcing me to keep my hand on the controller? It's just so weird.
Is this Game Pass? This looks amazing.
It's not Game Pass. I got it out of the library.
I might buy this.
This was one of the few exclusive sort of launch titles that Xbox Series X had, right?
I'm buying it right fucking now.
No, don't. It's like watch some gameplay videos first, because the way you pick missions is like they just kind of throw you in. You have to create a character, which from my understanding has no impact on anything. And then your character is literally, I don't know if you can see it. Let me try to pause it. See this like tiny little guy on that bird? That's your character. So you can't even see him. All you see him when you're playing in the menus is this tiny little like avatar icon.
There was a huge crab city. I don't care.
But yeah, this is like a perfect example of a game that looks incredible, but I don't think I'll go back to it because it is really hard to play. And for the missions, it's literally just like your first mission or your first time you get into missions, it's just a bunch of little like squares near the top of the screen, and it doesn't give you any direction. It's just like one is a side mission, but it doesn't really tell you it's a side mission. Then you click over and it says main story, and then you get this big long-winded explanation of what you're supposed to do in this mission, which is, I don't know. I had really high hopes for this game, and it really fell a lot more flat than I thought it was going to, which was really, really disappointing for me. And I also found it really hard to judge distance from enemies that are coming in on you. The only way to tell is just by sheer distance. There's no sort of like radar that tells you the distance in numbers. So it's really hard to tell like if people are above, like, I don't know. It was a big letdown. And the last thing I tried was actually a demo for a game I was really excited about buying, but I don't know if I will anymore, called The Occupation. I don't know if you guys have heard about this game, but it's kind of like a walking simulator. I believe it's about I think it's 1979 Iran revolution that happened. I think it's 1979. But anyways, it looked really cool. I really like the idea. It's a bunch of like investigative stuff, like kind of like a typical walking simulator with puzzles. Pick it up, flip it around, find stuff, solve puzzles. But I found the controls in this demo, which actually really turned me off the game, to be really just too clunky. They added almost like too many controls. So if you want to look into a drawer, instead of just toggling the drawer open and closed like in most games, you have to like hold on the mouse button to essentially like grip the handle, and then you have to hold down either like W or S if you want to like open or close the door, and then it opens super slowly. And everything's like that. Every door, everything you can interact with is this like extra step to do everything, which just really slows down the gameplay. Is really unneeded in my opinion. And I think if they just got rid of a bunch of that stuff and made it more quick and snappy, the game would be a lot more enjoyable. But I just played kind of the first opening act, and I did like the story, how it was unfolding, but the gameplay was just so slow and clunky that I don't think I'll buy the whole game, which is really a shame. I really wanted to like this game, and I just couldn't.
So just on the subject matter there, it was weird because I was reminded of there's another game called 1979 Revolution Black Friday that came out a few years back that was also about that Iranian revolution.
Yeah.
And then I looked up The Occupation, and it says it's set in the same universe as Ether 1. And I don't think it has anything to do with the Iranian Revolution. So
okay, maybe I'm confusing those two games
up.
then. Okay, maybe I am. I just know there was like a terrorist attack thing. I thought I was remembering it correctly. I didn't look it up before this, so I'm just spitballing. But I'm definitely wrong. I'm definitely wrong then.
Yeah, there is a terrorist attack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But it looks kind of interesting though. To see it's weird though. Like when you talk about like the interactivity and stuff, and feeling kind of like a little clunky or like too much extra work to do things. I wonder if it would work in VR.
It may. I don't think there is a VR version, but it's definitely something they should consider.
Hmm.
That's it. I have a few more things, but I'll save them for next week. I haven't played them very much.
Well, Falconeer purchased, ready to go.
Oh no!
Downloading Series X right
Didn't
now.
even watch anything. Oh no! Well, you'll have to report. You'll have to report back next week how wrong I was.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm definitely not saying you're wrong. It kind of has given me. Remember, what was it? The launch game for Xbox One was a spiritual successor to Panzer Dragoon. Was it Crimson Dragoon or something like that?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
And I was so excited for that. Crimson Dragon, maybe it was, and I was so pumped, and it was really disappointing. All right, we got to shut it down. We cyberpunked the fuck out of this episode.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
there might not be a show next week, so okay, Sean, what? Go.
Well, I was just gonna quick mention. Maybe people know this already, but both Ubisoft and Epic have like a whole week of free games they're giving away.
You know what?
So
That's
check it out.
the holiday spirit. That's, you know what? I'm glad I let you do
I
that.
didn't know about Ubisoft. I knew about Epic. I didn't know about Ubisoft too.
Yep.
Lots of free games on there, so if you're looking for stuff to play over the holidays, get that free shit. It's the library online for everyone across the
That's
world. Check us out, youtube.com/gamejunk. My Angry Commute, Equilibrium Sys for Huck on Twitter, Film Junk on Twitter. And from all of the Game Junk prototype crew, have a very happy and safe holidays. See you next time. Bye-bye. I might be at the point where I completely shut down podcasts. I've been just cutting everyone I've ever listened to, and I think I'm down to
I've been deleting a lot as well. Like I'm not totally cutting them, but like they come in, I'm just like no.
I don't listen to any anymore either.
That's a good call. I listen to so much crap. Such a waste of time.
I only listen when I'm in the car, and I'm never in the car. So, which probably goes for our podcasts too. So,
might be time to get out of the podcast game.
yeah.
I feel
What
like
are you talking about? YouTube's popping off.
Yeah, we're in the YouTube game now, bud. Don't worry.
I feel like podcasts are.
We don't even mention the podcast. We're all about YouTube now.
I'm really like sick of podcasts.
Yeah.
387. Flying up the charts.
Huge.
Pretty soon we'll be over 500. We'll be laughing all the way to that YouTube bank in the sky.